think I've figured it out. I think I know what's going on. And I also believe that the government does not have a clue about how to solve it. Now, it's actually a two-piece thing. One is the government hasn't got a clue how to solve immigration, right? We all know that, because they really messed up. They thought by bringing a lot of people in was going to increase the GDP of the country, which it does, but not per capita, which means the country may look stronger because there's more people in it, but actually everyone else is doing worse off. So you're feeling the pain. I put a car in for a service the other day. How expensive was that? If you've done that recently, I just thought, this isn't sustainable. I'm not earning badly, but I'm not earning super well. But even people who are earning super well must be feeling the pinch. I know this because I was chatting to someone the other day who's on 100 grand a year working for the NHS, and they said they felt the pinch. And I'm like, geez, well done, mate. You're earning twice as much as I am. But also, I feel that with the marches that happened at the weekend, which is quite amusing to me in some respect, and I couldn't get down for this one, the government doesn't know how to deal with this. It does not know how to deal with English people marching and behaving themselves. I'm not talking about the Palestinian march now. You know that, guys. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the one for Tommy Robinson, his march. Obviously, he was locked up Friday. He should be released Monday, or I think he's being charged or whatever it is. I'm not too sure. But they expected a lot more trouble, and they didn't get it. I think there were 9 arrests in the Tommy Robinson one. I think there were 12 arrests in the Palestinian one. And I just don't know that the government really understands what it's dealing with the Tommy Robinson marches. It's dealing with British people who, you know, they've had enough, but they're just British. So, you know, Englishmen, Welshmen, Scotsmen, Irishmen, all there, and women, of course. You know, it's an inclusive term. I hate to say it, but you know it is. And it doesn't know how to deal with it. It's not getting the violence that it expects. It kind of almost wants to be able to clamp down on these protests, and of course it can't. All right, it doesn't. It's not. I mean, that's the thing. It can't clamp down because people aren't behaving badly, because they don't want that. They don't need that. Now, here's the thing. Here's where the strengths lie, I think, within the Tommy Robinson protest. When the patriots get together, they fly their flags, they march peacefully down the road there. The government knows that it's a powder keg, and I'm not inciting any violence. And the fact I've got to keep saying that, guys, with all the tweets I put out and everything else, there's no incitement of violence. The government knows what Englishmen are capable of. I'm using it from now. I'm going to call it Englishman, all right, because it's in an English town. It's in London, so I'm going to call it Englishman. There's other patriots there. There's people from the Hindus community, Sikh community, the Muslim community. Everyone is there, and they're all identifying, let's say, as Englishmen. It doesn't know what to do, and I know a lot of people lean on me and say, Tim, Muslims aren't English. I get that, mate. Don't get me wrong. I understand that, but I taught a lot of people to fly airplanes. So when I look at what makes someone English or what makes someone British, where their allegiances lie, I think we just differ a little bit. That's all. I understand that you think Englishmen should be white, and I get all that. I'm not saying anything against that. When I grew up, I was following Frank Bruno and Daley Thompson, you know, Linford Christie, all those kind of people. Englishmen through and through. So it's difficult, isn't it? Although before 1950, of course, there were very few, less than 1% of the country was anything other than white British or white English, as it were, when we talk about England. So I just think, you know, we need to embrace a lot of this. However, we know the difference between people that want to be English and embrace English culture. We know the difference between people that have come over here to grift off the system, running county line drug gangs or whatever it might be, invested in criminality, come over, throwing their documents in the sea so we can't identify them, don't know what their background is, you know, using fronts like barbershops and car washes to process their ill-gotten gains. And I think the government knows that people that are marching in London, in these marches, the patriot marches as we call them, they just realise they're going to grow and grow and grow. And I just think it's that underlying nature of exceptional, I'm going to use that violence word. I think the government knows that people are there and they have capability. Jordan Peterson once spoke about the word meek from the Bible, and I had to look this up because I didn't really. He said, what's meek mean? It's like, you know, the weak. That's what people think it means, the weak. But it doesn't mean that, apparently. Meek is a really interesting word. I think a lot of men want to be meek without understanding what meek means. I think actually it's an ideal for most men, especially, I'll go and say it, Englishmen. Meek means that you have the power, and we all have this, by the way. We just don't use it. We have the power to destroy everything within our worlds, but we just keep the sword in its sheath. That's the idea of the word meek. Someone that has incredible power but doesn't use it. Does that make sense? They just control it. So it's about control. And when you look at those Tommy Robinson marches, you see control. That's what you see. I think there were 9 arrests in the Tom. I mean, it wasn't many, and I think those were preemptive arrests to prevent what they felt was violence escalating between them and the Palestinian march. You have to remember, those Palestinian marches, they're there to push. They're there to get a reaction. Remember, I talked the last video, guys, didn't I, about the process is the punishment. When we talk about Lucy Connolly, when we talk about Peter Lynch, we talk about what happened with Tony Robinson, the process. We all see what happens when we speak out about the government. We see it because it's in our face. You know, we see all that stuff. And we don't want it to happen to us, because what the government's done is given us all cheap credit. We got cars on credit. We've got mortgages, low interest mortgages, you know what I mean? We're all paying for things. We've got kids and stuff, you know, we're putting them through school and everything. You know, we have to be there for them to provide money so we can grow these things. We have jobs. That's what we do. We're in jobs. And if you speak out and you go and get self-cancelled, I was seeing Anthony Middleton. Ant Middleton comes from Waterlooville, where I come from, in Portsmouth. So I've always kind of followed a bit of Ant Middleton, you know what I mean? Just because I guess I probably would have bumped into him on the streets at some point, probably the same age growing up. He went into the Royal Marines like my dad did, and I went into the Air Force. I went into the Navy, actually, and then I went into the Air Force. So probably in the services at the same time, which is kind of weird, isn't it? But Ant Middleton was talking about how he was counselled. He said the wrong thing, didn't he, about several subjects, and they counselled him. He wasn't towing the party line, as it were. He wasn't saying that, you know, he was opting out of society by saying, look, I'm a fair and honest dude, and I'm just a bit firm. This is how I feel. And they didn't like that. So they cancelled him. Now, the government can't cancel everyone, but we're all worried about being cancelled on an individual basis, because if we are cancelled, i.e. we lose our jobs, I mean, I lost a job, you know, I don't go on about it anymore, but I've said enough about it. Then, of course, all of a sudden I can't pay a mortgage, and then the wife has to go, you know what I mean? I've got to go and try and find any job I can. It's not easy to do, especially at the age of 50, guys. We all know that. So the government is reliant on us not speaking out. We can do it en masse. It's hard to do it individually, like I'm doing now. Of course, you know, I'm not saying it's hard for me because I run my own business, and people that come into my business understand what I'm saying, and they're kind of there because they kind of agree. They're patriots, you know what I mean? Don't get me wrong. And they understand that at some point in your life, you've got to take a stand. Now, for me, at the age of 50, you know, I have a certain amount of wealth behind me. What I mean is, you know, I was in the military for a while, and I've got a small pension from that, which helps to pay the mortgage, and the wife works as well. So I'm a bit more bulletproof than, say, other people. And the Air Force have asked me to come back, by the way, because they run out of instructors, and we knew that was going to happen. So I'm not inclined to, but I'm having negotiations. So I'm a bit easier for me to speak out. And maybe we should lean on people a little bit older than me to speak out a lot. Of course, people do. I mean, Peter Lynch spoke out, didn't he? And he lost his life in prison. Lucy Connolly spoke out. You know, Tommy's speaking out. There's a lot of people speaking out that are in jail. And you've got to be careful what you say, guys. You can't incite violence. We know that. You can't incite violence. So I'm very careful when I speak out that I'm not inciting violence. Of course I'm not. Because the people I'll be violent against are people like, you know, I've got people in my family that disagree with what I'm saying 100%. And I know that they haven't really read too much into it, because they go straight into ad hominem attacks, which means they attack me. They say you're just saying that because you're a white man. So now they're attacking something I can't change. Your immutable characteristics. I'm a man. I'm a white man. I'm a straight man. You know what I mean? So they attack these things as opposed to attacking my arguments. That makes sense. Guys, these videos are like what YouTube should be about. Dude just got back from rowing. I row on a weekend. And he's talking about things he's been thinking about in the boat. I think it's important that we do discuss these things in the comment section. I'm really interested in, because where do we go? Do these marches get bigger? You know, there's not much we can really do with this government. We know it stems from the United Nations 2030 agenda. We know that's wrapped in sustainable development goals and all that rubbish. I mean, I think one of their goals was to end world hunger, end world poverty. Well, that's great. These goals are great. But all the governments are pushing towards us, and in doing so, they're really damaging, I think, the ethnic population of those countries. Yeah, so, you know, what is the answer? Hopefully, we're sort of looking at it, and I think it's ownership. I think it comes down to, you know, embracing the fact that we are citizens, we are patriotic, which almost seems to be a crime now, doesn't it, to be patriotic about your country? Doesn't it seem to be a crime? It's awful. But I know that us not being violent, and I know that us being calm and being meek, knowing that we have the strength to change worlds, because at the end of the day, it is our world, not the government's world. This is my country, not the government's country. Last time I looked, I served for 20 years for my country, and I don't think anyone in the government that I've looked at recently has done the same thing. Never saw them in Afghanistan, all right, that's for sure. So it's my country. It's not their country. And at the end of the day, you know, we're going to let them push it so far until hopefully they see what's happening. But there's a limit. And it's just, when do we reach that limit? I'm interested in the comments of what you think. People will say it's gone too far already, Tim. The country's irreparably changed. And I understand that. And I'm not saying I don't feel the same way. It's a double negative. I do not say. I do say that I do feel the same way. I don't know what the answer is. And I know people are going to say, violence is the answer. We need to overthrow. We need to... I'm like, yeah, well, mate, you know, as I said, we've got mortgages to pay. What's the deal? We need to vote in people that are going to do something. But as soon as people are voted in, as we've seen, they don't do something, because the World Economic Forum seems to, as part of the private side of it, seems to, you know, advise the UN that we all got to be going down the same line here. We all got to be doing stuff where we, you know, climate change, they say, don't they, is why all these ethnic minorities are coming across to irreparably change our landscape. We're not having kids, and that's what they're doing. They're going to come have children, even though we know they're a net negative to the country. I'd like to do a little bit about staying positive. I know it's difficult as well, but if you can just be mobile and eat healthily and try and foster those positive relationships in your neighborhood, I think we will sustain ourselves through this. And we know who to look at, by the way. And I would argue that the people you need to look at are the people that are wearing poppies at the moment, and the people that are interested in the history of those that went before us and what they sacrificed to get us to where we are today. And we don't want to lose that. So, you know, support each other. It is important that we recognise, and when we look at people, we know who they are. Yeah, you're a good dude. You're on my side. I got that. You know, we're patriots here. We're investing in our country. We're invested in the future of the country for our children. I know when I look at people who those people are, and they tend to be the people that are looking after themselves. You know what I mean? So try and do a bit of that, guys. I won't keep it too long, 12 minutes. All right, have a great weekend, guys. Tim Davies, Fast Performance.